Earth's first interstellar diplomatic mission began with cautious optimism. The UES Horizon glided through the darkness of space toward the massive station orbiting the neutral world of Calforia. Captain Alex Morgan stood on the bridge, watching as the sprawling structure grew larger in the view screen. "Nervous?" asked Science Officer Olivia Grant, joining him at the viewport. "A little," Morgan admitted. "Humanity's first official meeting with the Galactic Concord. Hard not to be." The Horizon had been retrofitted specifically for this mission, outfitted with humanity's most advanced technologies. Still, compared to the sleek vessels surrounding the station, their ship looked primitive. "We're receiving docking instructions," Communications Officer Sean Riley announced. "They're assigning us to the auxiliary bay." Morgan frowned. "Not the main diplomatic dock?" "No, sir. They designated us for visiting minor delegations." Grant exchanged glances with Morgan. This wasn't the reception they had anticipated after years of preparation and the incredible breakthrough of faster-than-light travel that had brought humans to the galactic stage. When they docked and the airlock cycled open, they were met by a single official, a tall, avian creature with iridescent feathers and 4 arms. It wore what appeared to be a minor bureaucrat's uniform rather than formal diplomatic attire. "I am Undersecretary Kretal of the Akrelian Diplomatic Corps," the alien said through a translation device. "I have been assigned to process your delegation's entry into Concord space." Morgan stepped forward. "Captain Alex Morgan of Earth, we bring greetings from our unified government and hopes for peaceful relations with the Concord." The alien's head tilted slightly, its large eyes blinking in what might have been amusement. "Yes, yes. We receive many such delegations from newly spacefaring species. Please follow standard protocols." For the next several hours, the human delegation was subjected to numerous scans, questionnaires, and what felt like deliberately confusing bureaucratic procedures. They were eventually escorted to modest quarters far from the station's center. "This isn't right," said Security Chief Maria Diaz as they gathered in their common area. "They're treating us like an afterthought." The following day, they were finally granted an audience with the Concord's Classification Committee, a panel of representatives from various species who determined how new civilizations would be categorized within the galactic community. The committee room was enormous, with delegates from at least 12 species seated at elevated positions. The human delegation stood on a small platform at the center. "After reviewing your technological development, societal structure, and biological capabilities," announced the lead representative, a reptilian Voss with emerald scales, "we have classified humanity as a Category 3 species." "What does that mean?" Morgan asked. "It means you are still developing and of minimal galactic consequence," said the Voss dismissively. "Your species has only recently achieved faster-than-light capability. Your biology is unremarkable, and your planetary resources are limited." Grant stepped forward. "With respect, our achievements are typical of many young species," interrupted an Akrelian representative. "The Concord encounters dozens like yours every cycle." The meeting concluded quickly, with humans assigned a minor diplomatic liaison and limited access to Concord knowledge databases. Back in their quarters, the mood was somber. "They see us as primitives," Diaz said bitterly. Morgan stared out at the stars. "They've made assumptions based on limited information. We'll just have to prove our worth." That evening, their liaison, a junior Akrelian named Trill, arrived with disturbing news. "There have been attacks on outer Concord colonies," Trill said nervously. "The reports are confusing, but something about swarm tactics and overwhelming force. The leadership is concerned, but not alarmed yet." "What species is responsible?" Grant asked. "The Xeraxi. They've always been isolationists, but never overtly hostile until now." Trill's feathers ruffled. "It's nothing to worry about. The Concord has maintained peace for thousands of years. These incidents will be resolved diplomatically." Morgan and Grant exchanged glances. Neither voiced the thought they shared, that perhaps the Concord, in its long peace, had forgotten something humans knew all too well. the brutal reality of war. 2 months after first contact, Captain Morgan stood with Olivia Grant in the Concord Emergency Council chambers. They had not been invited as participants, merely observers from an inconsequential species. The massive chamber buzzed with panic as reports flooded in from across Concord space. Nesthold 7 has gone silent, announced an Acrelian official, his feathers flat against his body in distress. That makes 8 colonies lost in the past week alone. The Voss representative hissed in frustration. How is this possible? Our defense systems are the most advanced in the galaxy. Displayed on the central hologram was footage from Nesthold 7's final transmission. Morgan watched with growing unease as wave after wave of insectoid creatures swarmed the colony's defenses. The Exaraxi moved with singular purpose, sacrificing thousands to overwhelm each defensive position. They're using basic swarm tactics, Morgan whispered to Grant. Overwhelming force at the point of attack. Just like the Battle of Thermopylae, Grant replied, or countless ant colonies on Earth. The Concord representatives argued in circles, each suggesting defensive measures that seemed naive to human ears. They spoke of negotiations, of technological solutions, of peaceful resolutions. They don't understand what they're facing, Morgan said quietly. When the Exaraxi ambassador's message played on the central screen, Morgan felt a chill. The creature's compound eyes showed no emotion as it delivered its ultimatum. The Concord will surrender all outer territories to the Exaraxi collective. Resistance is inefficient and will result in complete consumption rather than partial integration. The council erupted in outrage, but Morgan noticed something else. Fear. These species had known peace for so long they had forgotten how to face an enemy that understood only dominance. Later that week, Morgan received permission to travel with a Concord observation vessel to the edge of the conflict zone. The human delegation insisted on better understanding the threat, even as Concord officials dismissed their concerns. The observation mission turned into something else entirely when their vessel detected distress calls from nearby Acrelian research outpost. Despite protests from the Concord captain, Morgan convinced them to attempt a rescue. What they found horrified even the battle-hardened Morgan. The Exaraxi had overwhelmed the outpost, systematically harvesting resources and capturing survivors. From their hidden position, they watched as the insectoids worked with terrifying efficiency. Their tactics are primitive but effective, Morgan told Grant as they observed. They're using strategies Earth militaries would recognize from centuries ago. The Concord doesn't think in terms of warfare anymore, Grant replied. They've evolved past it, and that's exactly why they're losing. When they returned to the Concord station, Morgan sent an encrypted message to Earth. The response came within days. Earth would begin quiet military preparations while maintaining diplomatic relations. Admiral Peter Collins arrived 2 weeks later with a small delegation of military advisors disguised as diplomatic personnel. Morgan briefed them in secure quarters. The Concord doesn't understand what war really is, Morgan explained. They've had skirmishes and peacekeeping operations, but nothing like this. Admiral Collins nodded grimly. And the Exaraxi. They understand perfectly. They're fighting a war of conquest, and they're willing to sacrifice millions to win. Their meeting was interrupted by emergency alarms. On the main communications channel, a Voss commander's panicked voice broke through. Voss Prime is under attack. Multiple Exaraxi high ships have breached our orbital defenses. We need immediate assistance. The Concord's most important founding member was facing annihilation. Collins looked at Morgan, his expression grave. They're about to learn the hard way that peace isn't always an option. And we're about to show them what humans know about war, Morgan replied, already moving toward the door. Whether they want that lesson or not. The orbital platforms around Voss Prime burned like dying stars against the black of space. Lieutenant Sam Rivera watched from the bridge of the UES Swift, a fast response vessel that had arrived with the small human contingent. The planet below, homeworld of the proud reptilian Voss, was partially obscured by smoke from burning cities. This is worse than we expected, Rivera said, scanning the tactical display. HFY ships, massive organic-looking vessels that resembled insect nests, had positioned themselves in a formation that any human military officer would recognize, a siege pattern designed to prevent escape. The Concord defenders fought bravely but without coordination. Each species used its own tactics, its own communication protocols. There was no unified strategy, no central command. The HFY, moving with hive-mind precision, exploited every gap. Captain Morgan is requesting permission to assist evacuation efforts, the communications officer reported. Minutes later, Rivera led a team of human soldiers to the surface in a rapid deployment shuttle. They wore experimental armor designed to interface with Concord systems. The Voss officials had reluctantly accepted human help, their usual arrogance replaced by desperation. The capital city was chaos. Voss civilians fled through streets choked with debris while their military made heroic but futile stands against waves of HFY drones. The insectoid creatures moved in perfect unison, sacrificing themselves by the hundreds to advance their position. Form a perimeter around the evacuation center, Rivera ordered his team. Coordinated fire, conserve ammunition. These things don't retreat. For 6 hours, Rivera's team held their position as thousands of Voss civilians made their way to evacuation ships. Human soldiers demonstrated a discipline and tactical awareness that stunned their Voss counterparts. When HFY forces breached a neighboring defense point, Rivera quickly reorganized, creating interlocking fields of fire that slowed the enemy advance. He personally led a dangerous operation to recover a group of Voss children trapped in a collapsed building, carrying 2 of them to safety while under enemy fire. By the time the final evacuation ship prepared to leave, Rivera's team had been reduced to half its original size. The lieutenant made a decision that would later become legendary in Concord accounts. "Take the civilians and go," he told the Voss commander. "We'll hold them off." "You cannot survive," the Voss replied, his scaled face showing genuine concern. "We don't need to survive. We just need to buy time." As the last ships lifted off, Rivera and his remaining team created a fighting retreat through the city, using explosives and ambush tactics to confuse and delay the HFY advance. Against all odds, they managed to reach their hidden shuttle and escape just as the city fell. Back aboard the Horizon, Captain Morgan received Rivera's team with solemn respect. News of their actions had already spread throughout the Concord fleet. The High Council convened an emergency session. For the first time, humans were invited to speak as equals rather than observers. "How did your soldiers know what to do?" asked the Akrelian High Chancellor. The tactical situation was chaos. "Because we've studied warfare for thousands of years," Morgan replied simply. "What you saw today wasn't exceptional by human standards. It was just soldiers doing what they're trained to do." A profound silence fell over the chamber. "The HFY have conquered half our territory in weeks," said the Voss elder, his voice heavy with grief. "Our most advanced defenses failed. Our strategies proved useless." Admiral Collins stepped forward. "Earth is prepared to offer military assistance to the Concord. We have ships, soldiers, and tactical experience that might help turn the tide." The council members exchanged uncertain glances. The concept of accepting help from a primitive species clearly troubled them. "The HFY will reach Earth eventually," Morgan added quietly. "We're fighting for our survival too." After hours of debate, the decision was made. The Galactic Concord would formally accept Earth's military assistance. Operation Thunderbolt, the first human-led combat initiative in interstellar space, would begin within the week. Admiral Elaine Powell stood at the command center of the UES Valiant, watching as her fleet assembled at the designated coordinates. 25 human warships had arrived in Concord space, modified with alien technology, but still recognizably human in design and purpose. They were joined by 40 Concord vessels, whose captains had agreed to follow human tactical leadership. "Fleet reports ready, Admiral," said her executive officer, Commander Ray Daniels. "And the Concord captains?" Powell asked. Nervous, ma'am. They've never fought as a coordinated battle group before. Powell nodded. This would be the first true test of human military doctrine against the Xeraxi. Their target was Nexus Station, a major transportation hub that the Xeraxi had captured 3 weeks earlier. Intelligence suggested they were using it as a staging area for the next phase of their invasion. "Open a channel to all ships," Powell ordered. When the communications officer nodded, she spoke clearly. "This is Admiral Powell. Today we demonstrate what it means to fight as one force with one purpose. The Xeraxi believe they face a disorganized opponent. They're wrong." The fleet moved through hyperspace using a formation that confused the Concorde captains, but made perfect sense to human tacticians, an offset approach that would allow them to emerge from multiple vectors simultaneously. 30 seconds to reversion, Daniels announced. Powell felt the familiar tension before battle. Commence Operation Thunderbolt. The human ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect coordination, immediately launching fighter squadrons and beginning electronic warfare operations. The Concorde vessels followed seconds later, their superior weapon systems complementing the human tactical approach. The Xeraxi defenders reacted with visible confusion. Their swarm tactics faltered against the unpredictable human-designed attack pattern. "They're expecting us to follow Concorde doctrine," Powell observed. "They don't know how to respond to this approach." On the tactical display, Powell watched as Captain Rosa Martinez led a squadron of fast attack craft on a daring raid against the station's sensor array. Meanwhile, Commander Wai Lu coordinated a feint that drew Xeraxi forces away from the station's critical power nodes. "This is incredible," said the Akrelian observer on Powell's bridge. "Your ships are moving as if they share a single mind, but each commander is making independent decisions." "It's called Mission Command," Powell explained. "We give our officers clear objectives, but trust them to determine how best to achieve them." 4 hours into the battle, the human-led forces had secured the outer defenses of Nexus Station. The Xeraxi, for the first time since their invasion began, were in retreat. Powell ordered boarding teams to secure the station. Among them was a joint human Voss squad, led by Lieutenant Kelly Adams. They fought through the station's corridors, adapting their tactics as they encountered different Xeraxi drone types. Adams noticed something troubling during the operation. "The Xeraxi are learning," she reported to Powell. "They're beginning to copy our squad movements." By the time Nexus Station was secured, the human fleet had suffered losses, but the victory was decisive. The Concorde representatives were astonished by the effectiveness of human warfare. "How did your people develop such tactics?" asked a Voss commander. "Through centuries of fighting each other," Powell answered honestly. "What you saw today draws on military doctrine developed through thousands of years of human conflict." In the aftermath, Concorde scientists began working closely with human engineers to integrate Earth military technology with alien systems. Training programs were established where human officers taught combat tactics to Concorde species. But the victory had also drawn the Xeraxi's full attention. Intelligence reports indicated they were specifically targeting human ships in subsequent encounters, recognizing the new threat. "They're adapting their strategy," Powell told Morgan during a secure transmission. "The next battle will be harder. Then we'll need to forge a deeper alliance," Morgan replied. "It's time to fully integrate our forces." Powell looked at the star map showing Xeraxi territory, and time to take the fight to them. The observation deck of Concorde Station Alpha hummed with activity as Admiral Elaine Powell stood beside Akrelian High Marshal Skerix. Before them, officers from a dozen species worked at holographic displays, coordinating the movements of the newly formed Allied fleet. "Your proposal for a joint command structure is unprecedented," said Skerix, his feathers shifting in what Powell had learned was an expression of uncertainty. "No species has ever commanded Akrelian warships besides our own. And no human has ever served under an alien commander," Powell replied evenly. "But if we're going to win this war, we need to leverage the strengths of each species." The creation of the Human Concorde Joint Command had not come easily. 3 months of diplomatic negotiations, technological integration, and cultural exchange have been required. But after the success at Nexus Station and several smaller victories using human tactics, even the most skeptical Concord leaders had recognized the need for change. In the station's massive training facility, Marine Commander Jack Wilson supervised combat exercises between human soldiers and Voss warriors. The reptilian aliens possessed natural armor and strength far exceeding humans, but lacked tactical flexibility. "Don't just charge forward," Wilson called out as a Voss soldier was tagged by simulated enemy fire. "Use cover, communicate with your team." The Voss commander, Screeth, approached Wilson after the exercise. "Your methods seem inefficient. Our natural protection allows us to withstand attacks that would kill humans. And that's exactly why the Exaraxi target your communication officers first," Wilson explained patiently. "Strength means nothing without coordination." By the end of the week, the Voss squad had adopted human small unit tactics while teaching humans how to maximize the effectiveness of Voss energy weapons. Similar exchanges happened throughout the station as species that had barely acknowledged each other before were now fighting for mutual survival. In the research section, Dr. Nicole Bryant led a team developing new weapons systems that combined human military concepts with alien technology. Her current project integrated Earth missile guidance systems with Akrelian energy weapons. "The Exaraxi adapted to our standard munitions after Nexus," she explained to visiting Concord officials. "But this hybrid approach will give us an advantage they won't expect." Bryant had become a symbol of human ingenuity to many Concord scientists. Where they had focused on elegant, efficient designs, humans brought a practical, sometimes crude approach that yielded surprising results. The true test of the new alliance came at the Battle of Cirrus Belt, where Xeraxi forces had established a forward base in an asteroid field. Commander Wilson led a mixed company of human, Voss, and Akrelian soldiers in a boarding action against the main Xeraxi control ship. Fighting through the alien vessel's corridors, Wilson's team faced wave after wave of Xeraxi drones. When they were cut off from their extraction point, Wilson made a decision that would later become legendary among the Voss. "Screeth, take your warriors through the main corridor as a diversion," he ordered. "My team will use the maintenance shafts to reach the control center." "That is certain death," Screeth objected. "No, it's a tactical split. We'll meet at the rendezvous point." Against all expectations, the plan worked. Wilson's team disabled the Xeraxi ship's central nervous system, while Screeth's warriors drew the defenders away. Both groups suffered casualties but accomplished their mission. When they returned to the Allied fleet, the story of their cooperation spread quickly. Wilson found himself being honored in Voss warrior ceremonies, while human soldiers began adopting aspects of alien combat traditions. As preparations for the first major counteroffensive began, Admiral Powell met with the full Joint Command Council. "The Xeraxi believed they faced a collection of separate species," she told them. "Instead, they forged us into something new, an alliance that combines the best of each civilization." High Marshal Scarix extended his primary wings in the Akrelian gesture of respect. "Perhaps this is why humans were needed. You remember what we have forgotten, that sometimes creation comes through conflict." Powell nodded. "Now let's take the fight to their territory." The massive joint fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Xeraxi home system. 200 ships representing 7 species moved in perfect formation, the culmination of months of planning and intelligence gathering. At the center of the formation was the UES Valiant, Admiral Powell's flagship, now enhanced with the best technology the Concorde could offer. "All battle groups report ready, Admiral," Commander Daniels announced. Powell studied the tactical display showing the Xeraxi homeworld. Intelligence had confirmed this was the central hive, the source of the collective intelligence guiding the invasion. After pushing back Xeraxi forces across 3 sectors, the Allied fleet had earned this opportunity to strike at the heart of the enemy. "Begin Operation Spearpoint," Powell ordered. The fleet separated into precisely coordinated battle groups, each with a specific objective. Akrelian cruisers provided long-range fire support, while human and Voss vessels drove toward the planet in attack formation. For the first time in the war, the Allies had achieved strategic surprise. Major Diane Foster checked her equipment one final time as her dropship approached the planet's surface. She commanded Alpha Team, a special forces unit composed of the best operators from 3 species. 2 minutes to landing, the pilot announced. Heavy resistance detected at the insertion point. Foster looked at her team, 6 humans, 4 Voss, and 3 Akrelians, each chosen for specific skills. They had trained together for weeks, learning to leverage their different biological capabilities and combat styles. "Remember the mission," Foster said firmly. "We need to reach the central neural node and deploy the disruptor. Everything else is secondary." The dropship rocked violently as it entered the atmosphere under heavy fire. Foster steadied herself against the bulkhead. "Landing zone is too hot," the pilot shouted, diverting to secondary site. When they finally touched down, it was 3 kilometers from their intended insertion point. Foster led her team out into the alien landscape. The Exaraxi homeworld was a nightmarish environment of massive organic structures that seemed to pulse with life. "Movement ahead," warned Sergeant Liu, the team's scout. Lots of them. The first engagement was brutal. Saraxi drones attacked in overwhelming numbers, forcing the team to use their environment for cover. The Voss warriors provided heavy firepower, while the Akrelians used their natural flying ability to spot enemy movements. "They're not just attacking randomly," Foster observed. "They're herding us away from the central hive." For 6 hours, Alpha Team fought their way through increasingly dense resistance. 2 team members were lost in a particularly fierce ambush, but Foster kept them moving forward, adapting their route as the Exaraxi attempted to block their advance. Above the planet, the space battle raged with unprecedented intensity. The Allied fleet executed complex maneuvers that confused the Exaraxi hive ships, preventing them from coordinating effectively. When Foster's team finally reached the central hive structure, they faced their greatest challenge. The entrance was guarded by a new type of Exaraxi, larger, more intelligent, capable of independent action. "These must be the Hive Guardians intelligence warned about," said Kraz, the Akrelian communications specialist. Foster analyzed the situation quickly. "Standard approach won't work. We need to split their attention." She divided the team into 3 elements, each approaching from a different direction. The tactic worked, creating enough confusion for them to breach the outer defenses and enter the central hive. Inside, they encountered the physical manifestation of the Taraxi collective intelligence, a massive neural structure pulsing with bioelectric energy. Defending it were hundreds of drones connected directly to the central mind. "Plant the disruptor," Foster ordered as her team established a defensive perimeter. "We'll hold them off." The fighting was desperate as waves of Exaraxi attacked their position. Foster moved among her team, directing fire, plugging gaps in their defense, inspiring them to hold just a little longer. When the disruptor activated, the effect was immediate and dramatic. The neural structure convulsed, sending chaotic signals to the connected drones. Throughout the hive and across the system, Exaraxi forces suddenly lost coordination. "It's working," shouted the Voss heavy weapons specialist as enemy drones began moving erratically, some even attacking each other. Foster didn't allow herself to celebrate yet. "Begin extraction. This isn't over until we're off this planet." In orbit, Admiral Powell watched as the Exaraxi fleet's perfect formation disintegrated into chaos. A new understanding. The Great Hall of Concord Station Alpha was filled with representatives from every member species. 1 year had passed since the Battle of the Hive World. The Exaraxi forces, without their central intelligence to guide them, had fragmented into isolated pockets that were systematically contained or defeated. Captain Alex Morgan, now wearing the formal uniform of an Earth diplomat, stood at the center of the hall alongside Admiral Powell and Major Foster. Before them, the High Council of the Galactic Concord had assembled for a historic announcement. Today, we formally recognize the people of Earth as a Category 1 species and full members of the Galactic Concord, declared the Akrelian High Chancellor. Their contribution to our collective survival cannot be measured. The hall erupted in sounds of approval. The chirping of Akrelians, the deep rumbling of Voss approval, and many other alien expressions of support. Morgan felt a profound sense of vindication. From dismissed newcomers to respected allies in less than 2 years. After the ceremony, Morgan found himself in conversation with Trill, the once junior Akrelian diplomat who had first briefed them about the Exaraxi attacks. "I must confess something," Trill said, his feathers arranged in a pattern of humility. "When your species first arrived, I thought you primitive and unworthy of significant attention." "And now?" Morgan asked. "Now I understand that we have become complacent. The Concord had forgotten something essential that humans never did. Sometimes peace must be defended through strength." Throughout the station, similar conversations were happening as species that had known only peace for generations grappled with the lessons of war. In the memorial garden, a new monument had been erected bearing the names of all who had fallen in the conflict, human names listed alongside those of other species. Major Foster stood before this monument with Screeth, the Voss commander who had fought beside her team at the Hive World. "My people have a saying," Screeth told her. "The strongest metal is forged in the hottest fire. I believe humans are such metal." Foster smiled slightly. "We have a similar saying, but we've learned from you too. That strength without wisdom leads nowhere good." In the station's scientific wing, Dr. Bryant was leading a joint research team developing technologies that combined human military concepts with Concord peaceful applications. Their current project adapted the neural disruptor used against the Exaraxi into a medical device to treat certain neurological conditions. "The human approach is fascinating," commented her Akrelian colleague. "You create weapons, then immediately look for ways to turn them into tools of healing." "That's the paradox of humanity," Bryant replied. "We understand destruction, so we can better appreciate creation." On the observation deck, Admiral Powell stood with High Marshal Skerrix, watching as ships from dozens of worlds moved through the busy space lanes around the station. "The Concord Defense Force is requesting more human officers to serve as tactical advisors," Skerrix informed her. "Your perspective has proven invaluable. And we're hoping more Concord scientists will visit Earth," Powell responded. "This alliance goes both ways." As the celebrations continued, Morgan found a quiet moment to look out at the stars. He thought about how far humanity had come, from being dismissed as just another species to helping save galactic civilization. A young Voss approached him, offering the traditional warrior's salute. "My clutch father served with Commander Wilson at the Ceres Belt. He says humans taught him that true courage is not the absence of fear, but action despite it." Morgan nodded. "And we learned from the Voss that strength comes in many forms." Later that evening, as representatives from all species gathered for the formation ceremony of the new Interstellar Alliance, Morgan took the podium. The room fell silent as he prepared to speak. "When humans first met the Concord, you thought we were just another species finding its way to the stars. Then the Exaraxi came, and circumstances forced us to show you something else, our capacity for warfare." He paused, looking across the diverse faces before him. "But that's not the complete truth of humanity. We are warriors when we must be, yes, but we are also healers, builders, explorers, and dreamers. Our greatest hope is that we have earned our place among you not just by helping win a war, but by showing that we are committed to maintaining the peace that follows." As the new alliance charter was signed, Morgan realized that humanity had found its place in the galaxy, not as conquerors or subjects, but as partners who brought a unique perspective to a community of stars.